Hello and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. I am your host, Fabrice, and joining me here in the Murrieta studios is Dr. David Burns. Hi, David.
Hi, Fabrice.
Dr. David Burns has been a pioneer in the development of cognitive therapy, and he is the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 20 languages. He is an emeritus adjunct clinical professor of psychiatry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Welcome to episode 80 of the Feeling Good podcast. We have another Ask David today. So let's, before I ask David anything, I just want to let our listeners know that we had a lot of good positive feedback for the episode we did with the Tuesday group. People really enjoyed the liveness of it, at the same time as the teaching aspect. And so we decided to do more of that. And so upcoming in the next couple of weeks, we'll have another series on the role play techniques, right?
Absolutely. It's going to be great. A lot of fun.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, it will.
Awesome.
I always had the fantasy of maybe my Tuesday group at Stanford could somehow be, broadcast nationally, so people could learn from all over the country, all over the world. And this will be a little bit like that. We'll be using people from the Tuesday group and teach some of the techniques in much the same way we teach them in the actual Tuesday group for therapists at Stanford, although this should be appealing not only to therapists but to the general public. And some of the role play techniques we hope to include, of course, are the tremendous externalization of voices with the acceptance paradox.
That's your favorite, right?
Yeah, and you have to kind of experience it to grasp it. You can read about it in a book or hear about it in a lecture, but it's a very mind-blowing thing, and you almost have to experience it. It's a little like going to the Grand Canyon for the first time. And it takes your breath away, and until you've had the experience or seen it live, you can't really comprehend just how fantastic it can be. And then we've got, of course, feared fantasy, devil's advocate, paradoxical double standard technique, the man from Mars technique, forced empathy. I think there's a couple others too. Does anything else?
Well, you also have a little surprise in store.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to use your brand new recorder that you can take outside.
Yes,
with
right.
the lapel mics.
Yeah.
And you wanted to do?
Yeah, we'll do shame attacking.
Shame attacking, yes.
Exercises. This is typically every now and then we take the Tuesday group, who are all therapists, out. Sometimes we go over to the Stanford Mall to do shame attacking exercises. This is one of the techniques.
They haven't kicked us out yet. They haven't kicked us out yet.
Well, I think they almost kicked out Matt May. When he took his group out a year or two back. So we have to be a little bit careful. But we do goofy things in public, and part of the philosophy is the therapist has to do it before you can ask your patients to do it. And it's one of the most powerful techniques for shy people with social anxiety who are afraid of making a fool of yourself in public. We actually go and intentionally make fools of ourselves in public to get over that, and we give each other assignments. And the last time I took the group over there, my assignment, I had to go into the what's that place where they sell fancy bras and stuff?
Oh yeah, Victoria's Secret.
Oh yeah, I had to go in there and ask for a bra in my size.
Yeah,
and it was very difficult. I forced myself to do it. And the sales lady, fortunately, she says, "Well, I don't think we have that, but why don't you try the Macy's men's department?" So I got out of there.
Nowadays it's not so much out of the norm anymore.
That's true. But anyway, that'll be fun, and so I think this will be a new dimension here on our Feeling Good podcasts.
So you have some announcements also for us.
Yeah, let me ask you to read two. We get wonderful endorsements all the time, and I just selected a couple of them. They're really kind of touching.
So, all right. So this one is on the episode 59, going back to the live session with Marilyn.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't heard this session, I highly recommend it. This is really a heartwarming and at the same time a difficult session to listen to. This is from Lizzie, who says, I'm not sure if this is the best channel to filter a message to Marilyn, but I wanted to thank her for being open and sharing her journey. I am a hospice social worker, and I am in constant contact with people who are experiencing similar sentiments and fears and realities. Up until this point, I have felt the best thing I can offer is a listening and objective ear, which is great. But now I am aware of treatment options like TEAM-CBT that can make a radical and meaningful difference. Marilyn, because of you and your courage to share your journey, I have more tools and resources to offer others. You're making a difference in the lives of others, and the world is better because of you.
That's a beautiful thing, and I'll say that if you haven't heard that, you go to my website, and there's a blog tab, and under that are the Feeling Good podcast, which we're doing one right now. And if you go backwards to August 7th, 2017, that's when we did podcast 49, Live Therapy with Marilyn, Part 1.
Yeah, that's the initial one. The one that this listener was referring to was the tune-up part.
Oh, I see. That's a good one,
59,
too. Yeah. But if you want to hear them all, it's the August 7th, and it's called The Dark Night of the Soul. Mm-hmm. And it really brings the cognitive model to life, because this was a woman who was suddenly diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. She'd never been a smoker, and then she, as most of us would do, freaked out and became intensely angry, incredibly depressed, as anxious as a human being can be. And it raises the question, is it our thoughts that create our moods, as the cognitive therapists claim, or is it actual external events that create our negative feelings?
Yeah, that's a prime example.
Then there's one other.
This one is from Dipti. I think we've heard from Dipti before. He says, I think so. He says, thank you so much for that prompt reply. I get it. I have to use more I feel statements. This is about the interpersonal model. I realize that I have to practice a lot to get better at using these difficult but amazing techniques. Amazing with 3 M's, amazing techniques. I am so impressed. I think I want to register for one of your upcoming workshops very soon. I think I might plan visiting Vancouver this year in July so I can register for your workshop in Whistler. Meanwhile, kindly please let me know if you have any plans to visit India anytime. I'm so impressed listening to your podcasts every day. It's like you are my Buddha. Leading me to enlightenment every day. I feel that I have known these concepts always, but I am understanding them in the real sense only now. You make it very, very understandable. I cannot thank you enough for this. Thanks to you and to Fabrice for putting up these podcasts. I love your wit and style. As I am trying to use your methods, I have already started experiencing so much change, not only in my personal life, but also in my therapy with my clients. Thank you so much. Hope to personally see you soon.
What a wonderful note. And one thing that I love about what he's doing, he's working at it. And although he's a therapist, he's also working on his own issues and growing and changing. And I think that's what you have to do if you want to become a world-class therapist, is do your own personal work while at the same time practicing and learning these new TEAM-CBT techniques. And for those of you who are interested in a workshop, I have several coming up. One will be later this week. Now, this week being, it's going to be March 22 and 23, 2018, which this podcast is first broadcast on a Monday, and so it'll be Thursday and Friday of this week in Lancaster, PA. A 2-day workshop on trauma, including a live demonstration in the evening. But the neat thing about it is you can join online from anywhere in the world and watch it streaming live, or you can come to Lancaster in person. That's always a great workshop. There's going to be a big crowd there, and it's J&K seminars in Lancaster, PA. If you're a health professional, you get 15 CE credits. And
all this is on your website.
And it's on my website, on the workshop tab, and you can see the link. And then on May 20th, I'm going to have a one-day workshop with Jill Levitt. We're going to co-present. I love presenting with Jill. She's a clinical psychologist, and she's just an amazing teacher. And we're going to be teaching together. That'll be advanced, high-speed CBT for the treatment of depression and anxiety disorders. And so, again, you can find the link on my tab, and you can join in person here in Palo Alto or online.
Aren't you doing a Facebook broadcast with her?
Oh, yes.
Coming up?
Yes, Sundays, 3 p.m. California time, the David and Jill Show, and we've got a great show set up for this Sunday.
Which will be passed by the time this episode airs, unfortunately.
Oh, right, but you can go find it on my Facebook. You can
find the recording,
right, and we'll be talking about, among other things, intimacy. A fellow who's having trouble getting close to his girlfriend and is responding to her criticisms very defensively, and I kind of helped him work through that with surprisingly quickly, and I think people will learn a lot about the 5 secrets and how to deal with relationship issues. So, and then just finally, one last thing. If you're up in Canada or want to visit Canada, I'm going to be doing a 2-day workshop, again with an evening live demonstration on fast, effective treatment for anxiety disorders, and that will be sponsored by Jack Carusi and Associates, June 4 to 5 in Calgary, Canada, June 6 to 7th in Winnipeg, Canada. This is 2018.
In the email, Dipti was mentioning something in Whistler in July?
Well, that'll be an intensive. I'll have 2 intensives, one in July in Whistler, Canada, a 4-day intensive, and then I'm going to have at the South San Francisco Conference Center in, I think it's August, my annual 4-day intensive here.
All right. So let's move on to the questions we have for you. So this is from Jackie. I'm pulling them in random order, so we'll see what we come up with.
Jackie.
Jackie, yes. Yep. And she says, thank you for your blogs. I was walking to work today. I sell cars.
Or it might be a he.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say. She or he.
Yeah. And as I was walking, I said to myself, you sell cars and you can barely write an email, knowing what was headed my way. A morning of negative thinking. I thought about it and replied back, I made $67,000 last year, so I must be pretty good. Is my ego me? Where does this voice come from? Why does it want to kill me or weigh me down with negative thinking? Just wondering.
That's one of the oldest questions, and we can speculate on it in a minute. But the question is, why do we as human beings make ourselves miserable with these distorted negative thoughts? And then before answering it live today, I emailed him or her, whoever it is, yesterday, and said, "What's your thought?" And then we got a nice response there, and then you and I can speculate on this a little bit.
There's the response. He says, or she says, David, thank you for your response. I feel honored. I do not know where the ego comes from. I've read Eckhart Tolle and other authors searching for this answer. Even from an early age, I thought, there is something different about you, which actually a lot of people feel and think growing up. I do know with age comes wisdom, and I have learned to distance myself from these thoughts and recognize them. Thoughts like, you're a loser, you have failed, you could have done so much more with your life, will seep into my brain throughout the week. But now I recognize them and have more clear and rational thoughts that I have ready for the attack. Like when I feel and think, you're a loser, I recognize I've raised 3 boys by myself. I left my 25-year marriage 6 years ago with $18 to my name. I not only got on my feet, but helped my boys get going too. So I gently remind myself that I'm not a loser. And then other times I have learned to laugh because sometimes the voice is right. I am awful at grammar and writing emails. So what? And my laughter and grace lightens the loud the loud I feel, or the load I feel. On a different note, I wanted to tell you about 2 books that I have found that help me with depression. One being Dr. Brad Nelson, The Emotion Code, and the other book, The Healing Code by Dr. Alexander Lloyd. Both interesting reads. And anyway, that's
Can you
it.
finish it?
Well, she says, before I go to bed and when I wake up, I actually do the Healing Code exercises along with the music to them on YouTube. Love your stuff. Keep up the good work.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Jackie, and I'll get your ideas on this. Jackie is asking, where do negative thoughts come from? What's the cause of depression? Why do we beat up on ourselves with thoughts like you're a loser, you've failed? And also, it sounds to me like Jackie is what the Buddha might have called drifting in and out of enlightenment, seeing through these negative thoughts and feeling laughter and self-acceptance, and then other times thinking they're kind of real and feeling a lot of pain. And I think that most of the listeners have felt that way at times, know the pain of feeling like we're not good enough. I've felt it myself and felt intense angst and shame and, drifted out of enlightenment into that kind of depressive phase. I'll just give 4 answers to the question. The first answer is I think we don't know the cause of depression and negative thinking and why we human beings...
Do we even know the source of any thought?
Exactly. And the reason I say that is mental health professionals from all these schools of therapy are saying, here's the causes of things. Like Freud said, depression is anger turned inwards, but research never confirmed that. And pretty much any theory that anyone has proposed can be shown to be a false theory if you have a good database. So on some level, the answer remains to be revealed. But one idea about it that you, Jackie, have referred to is this idea that we have a self, and that our self can be judged, and that's the source of an awful lot of suffering. And that's one of the things I'm working on in my new book, Feeling Great. I'm really enjoying writing on that theme.
Well, she's also mentioning ego, and ego and self are not quite the same thing.
That's a good point. What difference do you see there between do you see ego more like pride or something? Or?
No. I mean, that's my own view of what ego is. Ego is kind of like a pattern.
Yeah.
It's a set of repetitive patterns that keeps you locked in a certain place. It's like it maintains like a homeostasis of the mind.
I see. But I like what you're saying there, and that's one issue as we get wrapped up in thinking we have this self or this ego. It can be judged. It's got to be so great. Another possible reason is that what we've seen with TEAM-CBT is the power of what I call positive reframing. That there's actual, and you mentioned it in the last podcast and got a lot of praise from emails I got.
What did I say?
Well, you said that we label certain feelings as negative feelings.
Oh yes, exactly.
And there's actually a lot of positivity in our suffering. Our suffering is really a good thing. That's a little bit too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
So when you're saying I'm a loser, I've failed, you're saying something about yourself that's true in a way, because we do all fail. None of us is up to speed, really. We're all very, very flawed. Mm-hmm. But these negative thoughts and feelings show that we have high standards, and those high standards can motivate us to achieve a lot, and also show that we're willing to be realistic and to examine our flaws rather than to deny them. It also shows a certain humility and all of those good and much more. And so those good aspects of what we call negative feelings or negative thoughts or upsetting feelings actually is a part of it. They're not clearly good or bad, but they're a mixture of the two. Another thing I'll mention is that I think genes could have a whole lot to do with it. We often think that it's childhood experiences that set us up for depression, but one of my favorite teachers was the late Albert Ellis from New York, who created what he called rational emotive therapy, which was a forerunner of cognitive therapy.
Yeah.
And his position, like he was asked, where does perfectionism come from? And he said, I think people are born with these things, 100% from the moment of birth. Some people are probably born to be more happy and optimistic, and others may be born with genes that predispose us to negative thinking and depression and anxiety and panic attacks. There's a kind of dog. And somebody sent me the link to the research on it. I stumbled on the research decades ago. I didn't save the article. Maybe we could find it online. But there's this dog.
This is homework for our listeners. Go find this article.
Yeah. But that when they're, because I recently visited the Santa Clara Humane Society with my wife. We got made a donation, got a brick for my late cat Obi. Who we sadly lost, and so I was reminded of this. They gave us a tour of their fabulous facility, the top one in the United States now.
Oh, where?
In Milpitas, California, and it's fantastic, huge, beautiful. The way they care for these animals is just unbelievable. But there's these dogs that, if they carry a certain gene, the moment they're born, when they see a human being, they go into a state of panic and terror. It's called the homophobia gene, but it's not like homosexual, it's just fear of
anthropophobia or something,
humans. And then the dogs without this gene, the moment they're born, and they see a human, they come over, they're wagging their tail, they're all excited. And that would be a model for shyness, where that would be 100% genetic. So that's certainly possible. And then finally, some of this could be voices from the past. So sometimes it can be helpful to see, well, maybe that voice, critical voice in my brain, is my mother or my father scolding me, and that like when I got all A's and 1 B, and then my father or whoever, my mother would say, oh well, why'd you get a B? How did you screw up? Like, it's never kind of good enough. What are your thoughts?
Well, I have some thoughts about this, and let me know if you agree with it. Those voices from the past, we hear them. They may not really be rational or sensical, but typically we hear them when we're fairly young, 6, 7, and so we don't have the critical thinking to go, that sounds like BS. So we take them on as, that must be true, because it comes from this very authoritative person, from this grown-up, and I guess they're right.
Yeah,
we take that on, but later on we never question them.
Yeah. We generalize from some specific screw-up to the self. Yeah. And you may even, we have a little new kitty that some neighbors gifted us after Obi disappeared, sadly. And, I just found myself petting her. She's so sweet, and she's just lovely and warm and gentle. And I was just petting her this morning and say, oh, you're such a pretty little girl. You're the best cat in all of Los Altos Hills, and you're so pretty and so special.
And then she scratched you.
No, she's just eating it up. She lies on her back. She spreads her legs. I stroke her tummy, but it's almost like I'm telling her, you have this self, this good self. You're this. Yeah. You say, and so we get addicted to that kind of thinking, and then when we're told, oh, you're a bad little girl or a bad little boy, we think, oh, I have an essence that's bad.
Yeah.
And we, as you say, we believe it. We don't notice the fact that we're overgeneralizing from a behavior to the self.
Yeah. Okay. So I hope that answers Jackie's question.
And the good news is, whatever causes it, we've got amazing tools to change this, and often very, very quickly, without having to take medications in most cases.
Yeah. Here's a question from Tyler after our episode 78 on the number 5 of the 5 simple ways to boost your happiness. And Tyler says, great podcast. I've seen the video and it's very inspirational. He must refer to the Melanie video.
Oh,
I
could
imagine.
be. Wow.
Is that the one? So he says, a challenge I have is trying to fit all of team therapy into a 45-minute session. Aha. Sometimes we're just warmed up and have to call it quits. I can certainly relate to that. This time limit is set by my practice and insurance. I really encourage the use of the daily mood log in between sessions to help make use of the limited time. Any other suggestions? I'll be tuning in via the web for the J&K seminar.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Tyler, for that important question. You can, in fact, do team therapy in traditional 45-minute sessions, and you can comment on this too. You have to, once again, I think the way that we've set up psychotherapy worldwide, these 45-minute sessions once a week makes no sense at all. But we have to do that until we can change the way mental health is delivered and billed. But I think you can do 3, 4, 5 times as much in a 2-hour session as you can in a 45-minute session, and it actually would reduce the cost of therapy dramatically, because as Tyler's pointed out, if you have to stop at the end of 45 minutes, most of the time patients don't even get started opening up until 40 minutes, till the end of the session.
Right.
And then you just empathize over and over every week, and you don't get a chance to get onto methods or paradoxical agenda setting or the tools that can change people's lives. Now, one of my former students, Sonny Choi, and I've written about him, he works where he has less than 45 minutes. I think he said he effectively can only get 35 minutes with his patients each session, and he works with people who are immigrants from China, from Central and South America, from Mexico. Many of them don't speak English, and so he has to work with interpreters. And he says he works very rapidly. He doesn't do elaborate initial evaluations. He treats them just the same way I treat people on the Sunday hikes. We just, what is the issue? Let's get into a daily mood log. Let's move right into the treatment. And he says he has pretty severe people who were referred from physicians to this community mental health center, and they have severe anxiety problems, severe depression, very few resources, most of them. And he says the vast majority of his patients are recovered and ready to terminate the therapy after 3, 4, 5 sessions. But he says we're going to focus on this one specific event rather than jumping to a new problem each week. And I think that's an important key to it. Jill Levitt, who you know, Fabrice, and who I do the Sunday podcast with, she also works with the traditional 50-minute hour.
Yeah.
And that's what she says. You've got to just kind of space it out and tell the patient, is it okay if we work on this one moment, this one daily mood log when you're upset, and we'll work on this each week until you've got it resolve this one specific problem.
Yeah.
And when you resolve one specific problem, you usually see all the problems fall apart like a house of cards, and the patient is often ready to terminate.
Yeah, one thing that Jill says is that she's very regimented about this. Like, if they work on a daily mood log and she gets to, let's say, the end of agenda setting at the end of the 50 minutes, she picks up exactly from that the next time around.
Yes.
So she has this agreement with people that there's not going to be a lot of time spent on extraneous things so that they can get through the whole process.
Great point, Fabrice, and that's, again, a departure from traditional therapy,
Yeah.
where people think that the goal of therapy is to come in and meander and talk
And catch you up on what happened during the week.
Yes, and I had this memory from childhood, and this problem and that problem, and I was actually taught to do therapy like that. It just meanders endlessly, and it never converges. And TEAM-CBT, as you point out, is highly structured, highly systematic, and we're looking for really rapid change by following structured, systematic steps.
Yeah. So I hope that this answers Tyler's question.
How are we doing time-wise?
Well, we can do one more.
One more question, and then we'll do some more next month.
Yeah. This is from Jess. Jess says, I'm a high school teacher, and a few of my colleagues and I are listening to your podcasts and relating the topics to the work we do in our classrooms. I have a few questions for you. We'll just pick one. It would be awesome if you could speak to these in some ways. Here's what she says. I find that using 5 secrets with students really works to de-escalate them when conflict arises. But I'm cautious of losing my authority in the classroom. Do you think there are instances where using the 5 secrets would not be advantageous for people in authority positions? Bosses, teachers, police officers, etc.
Well, I'll get your thinking on this excellent question. Also, I've used the 5 secrets in a lot of high conflict situations with paranoid, aggressive, violent individuals, and I found it to be amazingly effective. I also had someone who came to one of my workshops, and he was a social worker in Los Angeles, and he worked exclusively with gang members, and they're pretty hardcore individuals for the most part, and he said he was
whatever that means.
Well, that they murder people, they're into power, they're into intimidation. They're not exactly poets or individuals.
But it doesn't mean that they don't have emotions.
They have
and feelings and vulnerabilities also.
Absolutely. And he said that working the 5 secrets with them was just fantastic. That he said he was the only one, including most of the police, who could connect with these kids because he treated them with warmth and with respect and I feel statements and disarming, tried to see the world through their eyes rather than judging them or putting them down. Now, there are extreme cases where power and limit setting are important. When I was a resident, an intern, I started at Highland Hospital in Oakland, which was just an amazingly wonderful experience for me, both in terms of learning medicine and psychiatry before I transferred to Penn in Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania Medical School. And we had a psychiatric emergency room with 8,000 visits per month. And because it's a county hospital, we saw the most severe of the most severe. And people would come into the emergency room sometimes wearing medieval armor, swinging swords angrily through the air and hallucinating and making violent threats. And there were times when the thing that was effective was to say to the person, we're going to call the security guards.
Yeah.
And then once they saw those security guards walking down the hall toward them, they turned into lambs, cooperative lambs. And so there is a time when power and limit setting are required. But for the most part, you can work wonders with violent, aggressive individuals with the 5 secrets.
Well, you're taking the position of the therapist, but Jess is a teacher, so it's a very different position. There's a certain amount of discipline that has to be maintained, otherwise the class is going to turn into chaos. So. Is there any difference there? Because she can't.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
In both cases, you have to use 5 secrets, but know when it's important to yield power. And I'll give you an example. One of my students, Anthony Mascala, was a resident in the Stanford Psychiatry Residency Program, and boy, he worked at learning CBT and the 5 secrets and became just tremendous at it. But he gave an example where he was working with a teenage boy on the psychiatric inpatient unit. The teenage boy was involuntarily hospitalized, and he was trying to manipulate to get out of the hospital, and I can't remember if he wanted to kill somebody, or more likely probably wanted to commit suicide. And so he was shouting at people and or faking that he was recovered, and so he said something to Anthony Mascola like, "Oh, you're just like a probation officer. You're not like a shrink at all. You're just kind of trying to control me, in this angry way." And Anthony just used the 5 secrets along with a subtle limit setting and use of power. He said, it's painful for me to hear you say that I'm not coming across like a therapist, because I have to agree with you. I'm trying to control you, and I feel like I am in the role of a probation officer, and I'm not helping you. I'm not hearing how you're feeling inside. And if you're really pissed off at me, you have a right to be. My problem is this, Jimmy. I really care about you. And I know just this morning you were telling the nurses that you wanted to finish that suicide attempt that you had made, and you wanted to get out of the hospital and put a bullet through your head. And if I discharged you and lost you, I don't think I could live with myself. But all that being said, yes, I'm controlling you. I'm jerking you around. I hate doing it. I really like you. I have a lot of respect for you, but I have to plead guilty as accused.
Yeah.
See, and it was such a beautiful integration of setting limits and using power, which a teacher has to do, while at the same time showing warmth and respect and seeing the truth, seeing the world through the other person's eyes. And Jimmy, of course, he quieted right down, and they formed a really good relationship with Dr. Mascola.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, that concludes our episode. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Fabrice. And thank you all who wrote in the great questions. We really appreciate your support.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this podcast under the blog page, and where you can leave your comments and questions. The website has an abundance of resources for therapists as well as non-therapists, including books, workshops, a list of online training groups around the world, and much more. Theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. That seems to be recording.
Testing.
Hello, testing. This is episode 80.
Also known as 80.